This week on All Star Fandom, we dive into Batman the Animated Series. I'm joined this week by Alex. He's a co-host of Batman the Animated Series podcast. So, with our resident expert here, we're going to dive into all of Batman the Animated Series fandom, from animation to voice acting to legacy of the show. So, let's go ahead and jump on into it. All Star Fandom. Let's talk about it. How you compare the storytelling from Batman animated series to like other Batman adapted media after that? Because I think it set the stage for it for a lot of what we know now. But just what are your thoughts just on the whole storytelling?
So as far as the storytelling goes with the show, the thing I love the most about it is that I didn't know this until I started doing the podcast. The amount of influences behind the show. Because when they were kids, the people that wrote and produced and directed the show, there were things that they watched that then when they became adults, they were kind of paying tribute to. Like, so I was a film student, right? Like, that's what I went to school for. And anytime I did anything where I was creating something or producing, I would have odes to like Batman the Animated Series, for example, in there, or like I would, the little influences that I would pepper in. Things sometimes just for me, other times it was kind of like, let's make it a little more obvious for the audience that's watching.
Mm-hmm.
So when I specifically when I interviewed Alan Burnett, who's probably next to people like Paul Dini and Bruce Timm, is one of the most well-known names in Batman the Animated Series. He came on and he was the guy that created the Two-Face story arc where it was, he's got a dual identity, right? And like he's messed up. He's not just a guy that gets scarred and suddenly he's flipping a coin.
Mm-hmm.
This dude's got split personalities. He's got a dark side that he's hiding. That was Alan Burnett. Alan Burnett came up with the story for Mask of the Phantasm. He created the Phantasm. He created Andrea Beaumont. He created that whole story arc.
Amazing movie.
Amazing movie, right?
Yes.
So the dude is a fantastic writer, an amazing producer and story editor. And when he's been on our show a couple of times now to talk about the show and to talk about Mask of the Phantasm, which just had its 30th anniversary. So we interviewed him for that as well. And his biggest influence, his main influence, was Alfred Hitchcock. He adores Alfred Hitchcock. He turned. I obviously, as a film student, I had seen Hitchcock films, but not to this extent. And he's kind of like, in a turn, turned me into more of a Hitchcock fan because I've watched more. Because he said, well, anytime that I did Batman, or I wrote it, or I produced it, or story editor, I was always wondering how could I inject Hitchcock into this, right? And the storytelling is, I mean, again, Hitchcock's one of the greats, and the storytelling in Batman, that it has odes to some of the greatest things that like were in cinema when these guys were kids, right? Like Alfred Hitchcock, you couldn't argue that he paved the way for so many different types of suspense and thrillers and horrors and like just ways to shoot things in such a captivating way, cinematography. So all of that makes the show have extra layers for me. As a kid, I didn't know that, but obviously on some level that attracted me to it because I was like, this isn't pandering to me as a kid, right? Like this is adult storytelling.
Very much
that
so.
that they're not trying to like placate me, or they're not trying to talk down to me. They're making the stories that they want to make. And if I get it as a kid, great. If I don't, eventually I will catch up and I will be able to get it. And I think that's why the show lives on forever.
So I guess you talked about like the influences that they had, like Hitchcock had on them. So if we look at the stories of our villains, you brought up Two-Face. That story arc for Two-Face is probably my favorite story of Batman animated series, because you usually have your typical sort of, acid villain. That's it, or half his body, and that's what happened. But just how Bruce Wayne and Harvey Dent seemed like they were boys, they were friends, and Batman
Mm.
couldn't save him as Batman. And just him yelling out
Yeah,
Harvey as Batman was like so like, oh, like for me, that was one of the best story arcs there. But even just giving, like, I think the most popular one would be Mr. Freeze, right? Or I
of
think that
course.
story arc for him, because before I knew nothing about Mr. Freeze. Like, I will honestly admit, like my fandom for Batman villains, Mr. Freeze was not in that rogues gallery as like the be all end all villain for
Hmm.
him. But this show single handedly made him a primetime villain, you know? It
He
made him
went
an
from he
A-list.
went from a D, yeah, he went from D list to A list. Absolutely,
Exactly.
yeah.
So I guess when you talk about like Batman's rogue gallery, um, I think that rogues gallery, that might have been the most compelling for this. It may have been the most compelling from this animated series. Like you talked about Clayface's story of him what being like an actor and
Mm.
just
And an
just like
addict.
yes,
He's addicted. You know, that's a crazy topic to deal with a
I
kids'
know,
cartoon.
right?
But they did it. They weren't trying to like dumb it down for us. They were just like, let's do this. You know, that they're old enough to understand.
Yeah, and that was the I think when we'll jump into it now, it's just like that legacy and impact of Batman lore. Because we look at Batman animated series, and I think that's like the foundation, for me at least. I can say that personally. For me, that's the foundation of what I think of Batman. His code, his whatever, like that's the foundation of it for me. So I guess just overall, do you think Batman animated series had an impact on how do you think that series had an impact in on the character today? Like the how we perceive the character now. We've gotten a lot of versions of it in live action, a lot of new animated cartoons as well, but the impact of this show, what do you think? I guess just overall impact of how we came out on the other end of Batman animated
Sure.
series.
I think the impact is going to be more apparent now than it ever has been. The reason being is sure, like you could easily say that they took pieces of it when making the movies in the 90s, right? Like Joel
Mm-hmm.
Schumacher's versions are the ones a perfect highlight. You've got like Two Face, the way that Two Face, Tommy Lee Jones's Two Face is just what's the word, is taken down by Batman or basically thrown off
Mm-hmm.
the cliff is this is there's a bunch of coins thrown up in the air, right?
Color,
Like
yeah,
that's just a
uh-huh.
kid. That's taken straight out of Two Face Part Two, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
Alan Burnett, that's Randy Rogel, those the guys that crafted that story. That's how Two Face is taken down in Part Two. Is that Batman throws a case of coins and it throws Two Face off so much that he breaks down and he just can't operate anymore. So they
Yeah.
stole that for Batman Forever, right? Like again, this is what they did in the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies with Spider-Man the animated
For
series. They would
Spider-Man,
they would
yes.
yeah, they would take things from it, or even Blade. Like Whistler didn't exist until Spider-Man the animated series, and then they're like, let's use Whistler in the movies.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what they would do with animated series as well. For like a Warner Brothers or Marvel, they would go, well, we're going to make these movies. What can we use? And they would take the things they wanted. Same with Batman and Robin. Hell, Mister Freeze. Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mister Freeze is he's got a wife that's like in
Exactly.
cryo sleep, and it's the
Mm-hmm.
same exact thing. That's Paul Dini's story
Yes.
from Heart of Ice. So yeah, so they would take these things, obviously, but the main influences I think we're going to see now because the kids that watch this are now adults and they're the ones that are in charge, or
Are
some of
making
them are in
movies now, or
charge
making
of
yeah.
making movies.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like Robert Pattinson was asked, "Who's your biggest Batman? Like, what's your favorite Batman movie?" And he said, "Mask of the Phantasm." You know, that was his answer. You
Yeah.
know, and that's oh wow, yeah, because Robert Pattinson's like 30 something, and that would
Yeah,
make
he's
sense
he's
that he saw
he's
that
in
as a
our
kid.
age bracket, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very similar to like the Ninja Turtles movie that just recently came out. Seth
Mm.
Rogen was I think it was directed and wrote all that, right? Along with his team and whatnot. But he grew up with us watching it as like the 1990s movie, the 1990s TV, like the late 80s, early 90s TV show, right?
Hmm.
You go in this movie and you can tell, like, okay, someone from our generation has the pencil now, and they're writing it as a fan, you know, and as like somebody who wants to make sure that that sort of, I guess, that version lives on forever, or that sort of idea of those characters live on forever, or make us remember how they were supposed to be. Michael Bay's were a whole different, like they were Hulks, right? These are just finally teenagers.
Sure.
So I definitely agree with like
Yeah.
the with everything with Batman, and just that when you say Robert Pattinson, that's his favorite Batman, I think you're going to get a lot of answers from that now from people who work on Batman projects of saying like, "Hey, I grew up watching the animated series. Kevin Conroy was my Batman. I want to do it justice for him."
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And for me, if I'm looking at that overall impact, I'm thinking just personally for me, I'm never forgetting this series. I know what this series started because it gave us Superman, it gave us the DCAU, Justice League, all of that. Even like the animated movies and stuff like that that they actually did with like Kevin Conroy still voicing Batman, and you bring in George Newbern or Tim Daly to do Superman. Like you still
Yeah.
have those, like they're still like Tim Daly and George Newbern are still around, and
Hmm.
I'm sure if a Superman project comes up and they're in it, and I will admit, Alex, I used to be a snob when it came to Batman animated stuff because I would look to see who's voicing, and I would be like, it's not Kevin. I was like, I'll
I did
find
the
it.
same. I did the same thing. I did the exact same thing. Don't worry about it. I know. I know exactly what you mean.
I was
I'm
like,
like, who's
it's
Jensen Ackles? Like, who is this guy? Turns out Jensen Ackles is a very good Batman
he's
and also a great actor. But
he's a
yeah,
new
he's no.
he's voicing Batman now, right? Currently
Yeah, he
in
is.
the
He
new
is. Yeah.
versions of the animated. Yeah. There was I wish I would wrote it written into my notes. Um, have you seen it's like the Batman Superman, but they both have their sons. They have Damian and and Clark has his son. Have you seen that
What,
animated?
the animated movie?
Yeah.
No, that's one. I mean, I have been trying to catch up on those lately and watch some of them, but that is
Okay.
one I haven't seen yet.
Okay. Watch it
Mm.
and let me know when you watch it too, because the voice, whoever voices Batman in that, has picked up a lot of mannerisms from and voice sort of things from Kevin Conroy.
Oh, okay.
Um,
I'll check that out. I like that.
that made me want to watch a little bit more because I heard it in the
Yeah,
trailer.
you just sold a ticket for me, right? Like I'm going to watch that now because you said it kind of sounds like Kevin Conroy. It's like when people are like Troy Baker Joker kind of sounds like Mark Hamill. You're like, well, now I've got to check that out.
Yeah, so I think from we think about like, how does it contribute to the broader like Batman mythology too? You're gonna have like these characters come in and voice Batman who take bits and pieces from Kevin Conroy's Batman because he did it for 25 years, you know, and
Yeah.
who it's like studying tape. Like if I'm a basketball player, I want to study LeBron to see how well he's held up in like the last 25 years of being in the league, 20 years of being in the league, right? Well, Kevin Conroy's
Mm.
been Batman for this long. Let me study and figure that out. But I guess what's that legacy, Alex, of like the Batman animated series? The legacy of that show, the put a stamp on it. What what did that show one mean to you?
Mm.
And just from an overall idea of Batman, how did it lead us to like how we think of Batman to today, in your opinion?
Whew. Question time. That's the first
This
one I've been like, oh, what's the answer to this? Um, the,
we ask the hard hitting questions here,
the
Alex.
stamp the stamp that it left on, yeah, you do. um the stamp that it left on me would be ultimately I will always compare every other Batman to this show, right? And in a way where I'm not trying to say it's on this pedestal that nothing is ever going to be able to live up to, but this show got so many things, got everything right, actually. I will say everything right about the character and the world he lives in, that when I watch other Batman iterations, I'm always like, what elements did they take of the character and what elements did they not? Because there's not been one like Kevin Conroy's Batman from Batman the Animated Series that ticks all the boxes yet. It's like, okay, you've got dark and brooding, gritty detective with the Batman.
Yeah,
You've got Christian Bale that's supposed to be more grounded in reality when they started, and it's like, you know, he's a he's a boy that's still trying to like protect his parents, and he's trying to right wrongs. Like,
Hmm.
yes, those are elements of the character. There's so many other elements that they're missing because they just, I guess, in the movies they haven't been able to do the character as well. So I will always compare to the animated series and Left on Me, where I'm like, that's the perfect Batman ever.
Hmm.
And there's nothing that's ever going to change that. I highly doubt there's going to be a film or a TV series, even a cartoon that comes out that does the exact same thing, because it just, I don't know, it was like, as I said before, it was like magic. Everybody that was supposed to be on there was there at the right time. It was done the
Hmm.
right way, and it was just perfect. And there's nothing that, and it's timeless. And the reason that we're talking about it now, the reason I do a podcast about it, and the reason that there's a billion other podcasts and YouTube videos out there about this series is because everybody feels like that still. There's just nothing that's going to come close to touching the greatness that is this show. So I think that's the stamp it left on me. I think was the question how it influences Batman's going forward.
Yeah, like how is that? Like how does this series sort of contribute to that broader Batman mythology? Like we
Right.
have like again, we talked about it earlier. It's like the foundation of how at least how you and I seem to view and people who watch Batman at the animated series view Batman. Like he's our foundation. Anything that diverts
Mm,
from it, you're almost like, I don't know. Or something that leans in a little bit more to that series, you're like, okay, I recognize this. So just how does it contribute, like the no killing thing,
sure.
or no guns or all that? Like how did that
Yeah.
contribute um, to the broader Batman mythology that we know today?
Again, I think you just said it well there. It's another thing that Christian Bale's Batman had was the no killing rule that they finally brought into
Hmm.
the movies, which I always knew about because of this animated series.
Yes.
And I think that those people are now adults that are going to be able to write Batman scripts, produce Batman movies, act in Batman movies. All of these people that watch the show are now at that time. So I think going forward, we're going to have hopefully a bit of a Batman the Animated Series renaissance where there will be people that fell in love with that show and they're going to be able to show how much it meant to them by putting themselves in these projects and writing, just like what Alan Burnett did with Alfred Hitchcock, right? Like that was
Hmm.
his influence, and he put that in this show. Well, art influences art. That's what they say. That's what happens all the time. And there's going to be people out there that are going to be influenced by Batman the Animated Series. They're going to have a chance to put their own art out there that's Batman related, and they're going to be able to inject the animated series into that. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that because I think that we will have some of that coming, and it won't be the animated series
True.
perfect, but
Hmm.
there'll be Easter eggs and there'll be influences that you'll be able to see, and you're going to go, the person that wrote that or the person that did that clearly is a fan of the animated series, and I love that stuff because it's kind of like revisiting, but also you feel connected to it more because you're like someone else gets it besides me.
Yeah, and since you bring that up, there has been talks about a Batman sort of Caped Crusader, like a
Yes,
spiritual successor to the animated series. I think they were shopping it around a few places. Just before we close out and sort of put a bow on it, what are your thoughts on the potential of that? Because I don't know if you've seen like the cover of it. It's like the, you know, OG sort of
I
Batman
have,
from the
yeah,
comics, right? So what's your
with the
thoughts
purple
on that?
gloves.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
So I mean, it's tough to say because we haven't seen much, right? Like,
At all,
I try
yeah.
not to, I was the one of the many with foot and mouth when Heath Ledger's Joker came out because when I heard Heath Ledger was doing the Joker, I was like, that is so dumb. Why are we doing this? What is wrong with the world? And then he came out, and I was just like, wow, that was an incredible performance and such a unique take on the Joker, and what a great role that he took
Hmm.
on. So I try not to judge things until I've seen it for sure after learning my lesson there. And of course, it's got Bruce Timm at the helm, but it's also got
Hmm.
someone like J.J. Abrams, who I think I dislike more of J.J. Abrams stuff than I do like it, if I'm honest.
I agree with you. I'm with you on
You
that one.
know, and he's great storyteller, and he knows how to kind of like build a blueprint or something, but the execution of it just kind of falls flat in a lot of cases. So that worries me a little. Also, the director of the Batman, what's his face? Is it Matt something? I can't remember his name.
Matt Reeves. Matt Reeves.
Matt Reeves.
Hmm.
He's behind this. He's behind this show as well, which again worries me a little bit because I'm not the biggest fan of that film. If I'm
Okay,
speaking honestly.
okay. Side mission time, Alex, real quick. I'm on the same train with you because the
Good.
opening of that movie, the narration, it hooked me,
Yeah, me
and
too.
after that, it lost me.
Yeah,
Um,
I
I
thought at the beginning of that movie, this might be the best Batman film I'm ever going to see.
because of the narration, the intro, right? Like you're
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
this might be really good. But then I
I
got
mean, when
to
he
it and I was
says,
like,
"I am," like when he says, "I am the shadows," holy, that was like chills up my spine, right? Like he's like, they
mm-hmm.
think I'm in the shadows, but I am the shadows. What? That's Batman. That's amazing. Great.
But then after that, it was like, it fell flat for me. I'm just saying, like, um,
Especially the last 45 minutes where I'm like, where's this bomb plot come into play? Like, why are
yeah,
we doing flood? Why are we flooding Gotham? What's happening? Yeah, I agree.
yeah, that and then obviously teasing Joker at the end. Spoiler alert if you haven't seen it by now.
Oh,
But
That Joker. Like, he's rubbed chili all over his face or something. Like, what is going on with that puttied face that he's got, like Play-Doh? It's
yeah,
ridiculous.
I again, some people love it. It's good if you do. If that's your bag,
Mm.
by all means, enjoy it. But for me, it was just like, okay, this is what year two Batman or something like that. And I'm like, I'd rather watch Batman Begins, you know?
Yeah, I agree.
And thankfully that's
A good
out there.
Batman film.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
I'd
a good
rather
Batman
watch.
film.
I low key, and I'll say it to you and no one else. Batman Begins might be my favorite of the three. Um,
Oh, 100, me too. I agree
okay,
with you.
perfect.
I watched I watched that film so much when it came out because it was like it had some animated series vibes to it, right? Like you've got like Ra's al Ghul and or Ra's
Exactly.
al Ghul as they say, and the League of Shadows. But the main thing I love about that is it's like, oh, he's dealing with his fear and his loss.
Hmm.
And you never know why he dresses like a bat until that movie. And it's got year one elements in it. It's got animated series elements in it, and it's just about Batman. And I'm like, oh,
That's
this is a
it.
movie about the main character, not about the villain.
Not
That's
about
we're gonna,
Joker, because the second one was a
yeah,
Joker movie. Alex,
it was.
man, if we weren't best friends before this, we are now.
It's a shame there's a massive ocean in between us, but yeah, yeah. But I think going back to what I was saying before with the what was I saying before? Shit.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sorry.
What was the no? It was like, oh yeah, Matt Reeves on the Caped
yes,
Crusader.
on
Got
Cape
yeah.
Crusader. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So what I was saying before about the Caped Crusader as well is that I think I don't know until I see anything. It was also supposed to come out this year.
Hmm.
Warner Brothers is honestly a mess right now,
Oof.
and they I mean literally the phrase they Batgirled it has come out because they keep on canceling things, and now it's referred to as Batgirling it. You know, they cancelled this movie about Wile E. Coyote
Wile E.
suing.
Coyote and the Roadrunner. Yeah, John
Yeah,
Cena's in it. Yeah,
I know, and it's gone for a tax break again.
tax breaks.
Like
Yes, yeah.
they Batgirled it. You know, like that's crazy that that's even a phrase now, but that's what it.
I know we're
And
on.
they
I
didn't
know
even
we're on
buy Cape
another.
Crusader.
I know we're on another side mission sort of thing here because we
Mm,
will go off on those every now and then. But Warner Brothers has been, they've had 10 years to build a universe and they still haven't figured it out, right?
no,
Along with DC. You squander 10 years of Henry Cavill, you squander 10 years of Ben Affleck as Batman. Your story, you wasted 10 years of my life from DC,
yeah, yeah, you did, yeah.
like
I
10
want my
years worth.
10 years back. Yeah,
I
yeah,
want
I
them
agree.
back because there was
Yeah,
elements from that that I enjoyed. One, a real world, not a real world Batman. Um, Physics did not play a part in anything that he did in those movies. You know,
no,
And that's what I wanted. Like I want swinging from the grappling hook. I want,
Yeah.
just give me Saturday morning cartoon vibes with Batman. Not cartoonish. I'm
Mm.
just talking about his
And Ben Affleck
abilities.
was a big dude, and that was Batman, right? Like he had very much the like square jaw animated series type of
He
vibe to him, and
he
thought
looked
he looked
like
good.
he looked like you pulled him from the cartoon. Like when
Yeah.
he's Bruce Wayne with the hair, you're like, I know who that guy is without even saying
Yeah, yeah,
anything,
yeah. Like when he
Like,
pretends to be looking for the bathroom, and he's just like, "Oh, he's just looking for the bath," and that was
yeah,
like, that's his like, I'm pretending to be like a dumb rich guy, like
yeah,
like
just show up in my fancy
yeah,
car, do fancy things, and on the night later on, I'll be out in the streets doing Batman things.
exactly.
That's all you need, honestly. But
Yeah, I know. But then there's other elements like more than I like. There's other elements that I didn't like, obviously, and that's when I'm
I,
like, why are we doing this? Like, why is he branding people? Like, what are you doing there? Why
there's
is he branding people?
and that's the thing. Like I feel like Ben Affleck as that Batman without those elements and the quote unquote killing
Yeah.
In Batman BVS. Other than that, he gave us the greatest Batman fight scene of all time in the warehouse. I
Hmm.
don't think there's any other fight scene from Batman that holds up if you put that against it. Um,
Sure.
and he's just jumping off the
Yeah.
Batwing through the window, cape. I mean,
Yeah,
snap
that was
it.
comic book shop. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Comic book panels come to life. Yeah. So I think with this Caped Crusader, going back to that, I think it has the potential to be great. It's never going to be Batman the Animated Series, and I
Hmm.
think the biggest mistake that they've already made is by going like, oh, this might be, it's Bruce Timm, so obviously if Bruce Timm's behind it, we're going to get Batman the Animated Series again, and it's like, guys, he was one component to that show. There are
Yeah.
so many other people that were responsible for helming that ship that are not helming Cape Crusader, and J.J. Abrams and Matt, whatever his bloody
Reeves.
name is,
Yeah.
I keep on thinking Reeves,
Yes.
yeah, they're going to keep on thinking that maybe this will be Batman the Animated Series, but they weren't a part of that show, and I think it's going to be very different. I think it's going to be more like 1920s kind of vibes to it, or
Hmm.
maybe even going to the 40s and black and white serials, but like darker. Like Bruce Timm did a Batman animated short film that came
For the
out many
anniversary,
years ago.
right? Was
The
it for the
anniversary.
anniversary? Hmm.
It was, and that's when he had the like purple gloves on and all of that stuff. And yeah, the like it was. I think that's going to be what the
What
Caped
we're
Crusader
looking
is
at
going
it.
to be. Is
Okay.
that type of mini? Yeah, that's what I think it might be. But I don't know. Maybe they'll go really dark and use villains like Professor Pig, who like is a serial killer and like slowly like takes people apart and stuff.
Out and we'll close out there, Alex. I know we could keep going about this because we both love the show so much, the series and just what it spawned from that. But yeah, Alex, again, thank you for jumping on. This has been another jam-packed episode of All Star Fandom. Be sure to follow All Star Fandom Show on TikTok and Instagram, and subscribe on YouTube. Do all the social media stuff. We'll be
Yeah, go
here.
do it now. Do it now.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Alex. Man, yell at them. But yeah. Again, Alex, thanks for jumping on, and I couldn't be appreciative enough. Hopefully, we can do something else in the future, Batman related. We went off on a lot of side missions, and I enjoy when those shows happen like that. So again, until next time, everybody out there in TV land, not TV anymore, right? YouTube land, digital land, streaming land, whatever land that is. Do all the social media stuff, follow, like, subscribe, comment, do all of it. Until next time, peace.